Thank you for joining us for our Partners in Technology briefing today. My name's Darren Bond. I work in the Customer and Digital Group. And today we've got three wonderful speakers to keep you engaged for the morning, and we'll have the opportunity to ask questions. Let me begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. Pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. Of course, this is the Yagara and Turrbal people's lands, and we pay acknowledgement to those traditional owners. Bit of housekeeping. So exits here and here, but maybe use that one if you can. We go to an emergency location to the rear of the auditorium. The assembly area is in the grassed area in front of the Queensland Art Gallery. So I think just out that way where you had coffee. Bathrooms located directly across the hallway as you exit the auditorium, so just straight across that way. So we do have people on live stream this morning, so welcome to those people. You will have the opportunity to ask questions. I ask if you can just keep those questions to the end of the forum. We'll have the speakers up on stage and you'll have the opportunity to ask questions or any questions you'd like to ask at all. So we should finish the presentations around 9:30 or so, and then the opportunity to go out on the terrace for tea and coffee and a bit of networking. Apologies to those online who can't join us. Before I introduce our first speaker, I'd just like to highlight a couple of really exciting and I'd say life-changing pieces of work that are going on at the moment. And the first one is around our First Nations digital service centres. And this is where we've been establishing real businesses in First Nations communities to deliver commercial, sustainable services from those communities to organisations and to government. So we've already established two sites, one in Cherbourg and one just starting up in Palm Island. Our foundation clients have been Fujitsu, DB Results and Telstra, so thank you to those organisations. But I just want to give a plug to say, if you're interested, please contact me. We can have a chat, I can take you through it. No commitment to start with, but if you are interested, that'd be great, because we want to expand this to other communities across Queensland to help close that gap with our First Nations communities and colleagues. The second, also related to First Nations, is our First Nations Digital Careers Program. So this is in partnership with Microsoft. I did see them, I don't know where they are at the moment, but thank you to Microsoft for partnering with us on this initiative. And this is where First Nations people apply for an opportunity to go through a training component and then placement in a real job. Okay, not necessarily in their community, but anywhere across Queensland. And if you'd like to be part of that program and be maybe a host employer, there was a QR code, and I'll refer to it again at the end. I'll give it another plug, of course. So there's a QR code at the registration desk that you'll be able to use. So those two initiatives, life-changing for those people, closing the gap, working on making sure that our First Nations communities get the opportunity to participate in the digital economy. Let me move on to our first presentation. So first of all, I've got Tim Dunn. So Tim's the CIO within the Department of Energy and Public Works. He's been working in that department as the CIO for 13 or so years, but across the public sector for 40 years. So very, very experienced and very skilled at delivering digital services within Queensland Government. So he's been working on a number of successful programs over those years, ERP replacements, mobile app development, seen a lot of reform. I'd say he's probably gone from green screen to what we have now. Tim's going to talk to us today about a bit around what's happening about rebuilding QBuild. So he has a particular initiative, Build to Enable, a project that is supporting that reformation of QBuild within Queensland Government. So can you please welcome Tim?
Thank you, Darren. Thanks for that very kind introduction there. Let me add my welcome to you all this morning. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy Friday. It's a lovely day out there, so great that you've made the time to either join us in person or online. So, the Department of Energy and Public Works, as outlined in our strategic plan, we have set ourselves a vision to generate and build a sustainable future for all Queenslanders. We set for ourselves, our purpose is to power, build, buy together for Queensland. That might sound all a little bit a bit naff, but when you understand that our department is simply structured into 4 simple divisions: the energy division, the hydrogen division, which tends to cover off the power element, public works, which is all about building, the procurement division for government, which is all about buying, and our corporate and portfolio strategy division, which brings together our department. So we're a department of about 2,500 staff, and through QBuild we find ourselves in about 60-65 locations throughout the state. So let me tell you a little bit about QBuild. QBuild is what we call a business entity within the Public Works division. It plays a vital role in Queensland's $45 billion building and construction industry. QBuild partners with other government departments and agencies, those that own building assets, and it partners with them to strategically manage those building assets. This enables agencies to focus on their frontline service delivery responsibilities and commitments to Queenslanders. Now, as Darren indicated, QBuild are presently embarking on what's been labelled as Rebuild QBuild. And so the government of the day has recognised that there is this amazing opportunity to grow QBuild and the services that QBuild provides, particularly in the regional remote areas of Queensland. It's in the public media, the challenges around housing and social housing, and that flows across a whole range of building and building asset challenges. So Rebuild QBuild is taking a critical look at the way that QBuild delivers its services. It's looking to grow the workforce of QBuild, currently sitting at about 1,800, and for this financial year, slated to grow to 2,000. And then in the financial years beyond, it's also intended to grow beyond that, with a particular focus on field force staff, trade staff, and in particular apprentices in regional areas. You may have noticed there's been quite a push in the social media advertising in relation to the work that QBuild is undertaking. Now, QBuild delivers services all over the state and has a presence in many of the state's regional and remote communities, such as Charleville, Longreach, Mornington Island, Palm Island, Thursday Island. QBuild is just about everywhere across the state. Our current state, in terms of the technology, is the solution that many of you would be aware of, the old Queensland company Mincom, their product Ellipse. So Ellipse is the underpinning technology solution that's used by QBuild for the delivery of their asset management services. Our implementation of Ellipse originally went live in November of 2009, almost 14 years ago. The project to implement Ellipse actually commenced late 2006. Most of you will remember the iPhone was released in June 2007. So we started the project late 2006. It's not a stretch to realise that most of our business practices and processes that have been embedded into our solution certainly makes no reference to the use of a phone, a mobile phone. Many of our processes are bound by manual requirements Obviously, there's a whole plethora of spreadsheets that come into play, thanks Microsoft, that run the universe and help run the organisation. So the way that we deliver services today is vastly different than how the services were delivered in the mid-2000s. And so this is a real challenge for the organisation, and particularly as it is taking this critical look at itself and looking to really modernise the organisation and move into a more contemporary service delivery model. Our ability to do an upgrade is really quite limited for a number of reasons, one of which is originally when the implementation was done at the time, the inherent assumption behind Ellipse is the reason you want to know all about these assets is because you own them, don't you? And of course, QBuild doesn't own the social housing, the schools, the courthouses, the prisons, the government employee housing. It doesn't own those assets. It does all of the maintenance work. They're a corporate entity, they're a business. They need to be able to issue an invoice for the work that was done. And Ellipse, out of the box originally, core functionality did not cater for that, and that was a custom build element. That functionality has fingers out to our implementation of Ellipse, which means any further upgrade is effectively a re-implementation of Ellipse. And that's been a real challenge for us since implementation. So we've, to address the process and the technology uplift phase of Rebuild QBuild, we've established the Build to Enable program, and we've set for ourselves these 4 key strategic drivers. We need to make sure that we address the business risk. We need to make sure that we address what's coming from the Rebuild QBuild strategic direction. We want to make sure that we implement more contemporary systems that are going to enable better service delivery and better customer relationships. And we want to simplify our processes, build more efficient, consistent processes across the state, and make sure that those processes are aligned to our customer needs. And we're going to deliver this program following these 4 simple strategic principles. Our design needs to be mobile and responsive. We need to make sure that we bring our people along on the journey. We want to source what is for us the best available ecosystem of solutions. We don't believe there is a single monolithic, if you like, solution that satisfies the unique nature of what QBuild do. So we want to source an ecosystem of those solutions. And we want to make sure that our implementation approach mitigates risk along the way, simplifies those processes, and results in a fit-for-purpose outcome. So our simple focusing question is, how do we de-risk, simplify and transform our work processes and the underpinning system solutions to uplift QBuild's capability now and into the future with minimal impacts to business operations? Right now, we're moving through what we've determined as the right work phase. We're building out a very detailed business case that is informed from a request for information that we put to the market back in July. And thank you very much to those organisations that responded to that RFI. The information that we've got from that RFI has been very beneficial for us to build out this detailed business case that is ultimately our bid for securing funding for us to move forward with the Build to Enable program. A major part of this phase that we're working on is to define and refine those services, to review and document at a high level what those requirements actually are. And of course, those requirements will then help build out the invitation to offer when we have the opportunity to go to market. Some key points that we continue to focus with our project team are there on the screen. These are the key points that keep our current project team very focused on what it is we're trying to achieve. We've already run through now and run a whole series of workshops that's built out a service design for all of the services that QBuild offers. We've brought people in from regional locations. One of the challenges that QBuild face is the way that services are delivered in Thursday Island is quite different than the way services are delivered in southeast Queensland. Some of that is by necessity and some of that is by human nature. We're looking to try and standardise on those wherever we possibly can. We're trying to make sure that as we consider those processes, we don't make the mistake of, how do we do this process? We do it this way because that's how Ellipse works. That is not how we want to do the process going forward. We want to focus on what do our clients need and what's considered to be industry best practice. We've established what I believe is quite a mature project team in terms of their experience and the sophisticated approach that they're bringing towards this project. We're operating on very much agile principles, daily stand-ups, a whole series of tasks that have been identified, going through and ticking off literally those tasks in a Microsoft Planner type phase. We're very much powering through this phase, remaining focused on those strategic business drivers, addressing the blockers along the way and sticking to our tight schedule. As I say, we've established for ourselves certain phases along this project, and right now we're in the right work phase as we move through to identify exactly what is it that we're looking for from a solution. We're hoping to secure the funding that will allow us to move into the right solution phase, approach you, the market, to identify those solutions that best suit us, secure those solutions and move into the right implementation phase. Trying to keep it simple whilst at the same time addressing all the requirements for the business. 4 major work streams: capital at the highest level, planning and building activity that results in new build work, maintenance and urgent response work. There's a finance component to this. Now, I want to be clear, our intention is to use the whole of government existing SAP solution wherever we possibly can. And clearly, from a general ledger perspective, that's a no-brainer. The challenge becomes when you're a commercialised business unit doing maintenance activity, we need to invoice for that work. So we need to track and capture the work effort that's gone so that we can issue an invoice for that work that's been undertaken. So that's the finance component that is a bit special and is a bit unique that's required. The shared services bit, don't get confused, we're not talking Queensland shared services there. As you can read, there are some activities that tend to go across the major works around capital and maintenance activity: estimation, procurement, program planning and intake, triage, workplace health and safety, which we are already addressing through implementing what's considered to be the whole of government solution. And the same will be from a procurement perspective. We've developed a fairly sophisticated program view that we intend to apply as we move through to our implementation phase. We want to have multiple project teams with process owners taking responsibility for the delivery of this. Our current solution has come to end of life, so we're looking to try and move through as quickly as we can, although we recognise that a business change initiative of this scale is going to take some time. So the opportunity for the market will be, once we've secured our funding, we'll be going to market seeking offers from suitably qualified organisations that can partner with us to deliver what I think is a really exciting opportunity to modernise the work practices and the technology that underpins QBuild's service delivery across the state of Queensland. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Sounds like a huge undertaking, and I'm sure there'll be some challenges there. It's good with me in the room that you mentioned whole of government systems a few times, so much appreciated. So thanks for that. That's obviously one project of many that Tim's working on at the moment. Supporting over 5 agencies. Tim has a very busy portfolio of activities, I'm sure, that he'd be more than happy to talk to you about. Okay, we'll move on to the second speaker now. So Ashley Hill. Ashley is the CIO within the Department of Justice and Attorney General. I've got an interesting background on Ashley. He's been in the department for over 30 years, and it says he rose from the stationery cabinet to CIO. So again, that might be something good to chat to him about over coffee. But obviously, over all those years in that department, brings a great depth of organisational knowledge and understanding some of the cultural aspects of a really complex organisation. I can only imagine how complex it would be dealing with courts and judges, and I'm sure that's something that he juggles every day. Now, DJAG's adopted an IT strategy that, even though it's a complex organisation, is defined by its simplicity. And I'm sure we've seen strategies that are overly complex but become sort of doorstops. This one is, in its beauty, is simple. So realisation of that strategy depends on a combination of a number of contemporary solutions supported by different capabilities that Ashley will be standing up. So can I introduce Ashley Hill, please?
Thanks, Darren. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming along. I'll start off by just saying, Tim, I'm very jealous. I'm jealous of the simplicity of your organisation, and I'm jealous of the snazzy presentation. In the Department of Justice, we've got lots of lawyers, and so we love Courier 10 and lots of it. So you'll forgive me if my presentation's a little bit lacklustre. When you think of justice, you probably think of people with bad hair and capes wheeling in piles of paper into courthouses. And while that's true, the Department of Justice is actually so much more than that. And so my presentation today will give an overview of our department, describe our ICT strategy that Darren just touched on, talk about the journey so far on the implementation of our strategy, and then touch on the opportunities for the industry. Okay, so what is DJAG? The answer is diverse. The biggest part of our department are the courts and tribunals. The law is a very complex thing, and we, as a result, have a complex set of jurisdictions to look after that. At the top, we have the Court of Appeal, we have the Supreme Court, we have the District Court, we have the Magistrates Court, and we have the Coroner's Court and the Land Court. And all of those courts sit in over 100 different locations around the state, from Coolangatta to Savoy Island, which is 12 kilometres off the coast of PNG, and we sit in the courthouses that Tim looks after for us. We also have, in addition to the courts, we have tribunals, and a few years ago they were all consolidated into the Queensland Civil and Administrative Tribunal. That's designed to create more accessible dispute resolution for low value, low complexity disputes. And then finally, we have a dispute resolution function, which is intended to try and keep everyone out of that entire system. Pick up the phone, talk to your neighbour, sort out the tree, it's all good. So the next major part of the department that we have is licensing and regulation, not very similar to courts. The licensing function itself is very complicated. We license liquor, security providers, all sorts of things, all the way from cafes to casinos across the state. And we also have a major gaming regulatory function. That's the local bowls club up to Queen's Wharf. So there is an enormous breadth of organisations that we touch. We have fair trading as a function. They're the guys who make sure that the show bags are safe and don't have button batteries in them. Can't comment on the value of a show bag, but that's one of the things they do. They deal with thousands of complaints every year from people who feel that they've been hard done by, and they solve all of those things. Really important for the consumer who feels they've been ripped off. Managing things like lemon laws and such. And the other regulatory function we have is Blue Card. which a lot of you will be familiar with. Many of you will have a blue card. There are 900,000 blue card holders in the state, and we renew 180,000 blue cards every year. In fact, we did an upgrade to the blue card system a year or so ago, and it was about a 3-week process to get a blue card if things went well. We digitised the system, and now it takes about 20 minutes, so we're pretty pleased about that, as are the consumers. Okay, what else do we do? We also have 2 of the largest law firms in the state as a part of our organisation. One is Crown Law, which does civil work, and the other one is the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, who does all the criminal work for the community. Each of those organisations is about 400 people. So a pretty large law firm, pretty complicated. We have the Office of the Public Guardian. The role of the Office of the Public Guardian is to look after people with impaired decision-making capability. That could be someone who's in an aged care home who has no family, could be a child in youth detention, could be any number of situations. So that's a really important function for the most vulnerable people in our society. We also have the Office of Women's Safety and Violence Prevention. This is a very small team trying to tackle a very wicked problem, which is domestic and family violence. And a key part of the function of that team is to partner with non-government organisations and to distribute funds to help deliver the services closest to where they're needed. Then we have, in the interests of not boring you to death, I just grouped a whole bunch together of the other units we have. We have the Registry of Births, Deaths and Marriages, we have Victims Assist Queensland, the Commissioner for Body Corporate and Community Management. If any of you live in a unit, you'll know who they are. We have the Justice of the Peace Branch, and the list just goes on and on. Very complicated, very diverse business. We have the largest statute book in Queensland. Most agencies have about half a dozen pieces of legislation that might inform what they do. DJAG is responsible for over 250 acts. That's a monster. And for our sins, we have also been gifted Forensic Services Queensland. You may have seen that in the news recently. That will be coming to DJAG from 1 July next year, and we'll be looking after scientists and forensic analysis, because, you know, that fits into DJAG really well. Okay, so our ICT strategy. As Darren said, I think our strategy is beautiful because it is simple. If we were to develop a strategy that tried to meet the needs of all of those people, many of whom I haven't didn't mention, our strategy truly would be a doorstop, and it would be impossible. So we said that what is it that we need to do in the Department of Justice to try and meet the needs of the organisation, and we focused on getting the basics right. Let's focus on getting portals. Let's focus on good content management. Let's get good information security. Let's have, you know, some simple case management capability. And the theory being that a rising tide will lift all boats, rather than saying, you know, the most important team can get all of the budget. So, as you can see on the screen, common capabilities based on mainstream technology. I'm a big fan of staying in the mainstream because we've got such a huge ICT debt from trying to buy best of breed in the past, and then we reuse those technologies for any application that we can across the organisation. There's a link there, and feel free to have a look at the strategy. And you'll probably come to the conclusion that it's IT 101. Consolidate on proven technologies and reuse. The sort of thing we were doing 30-something years ago. And a byproduct of that housekeeping is that we will be introducing new contemporary technologies, and then our very diverse business units can apply that in their unique context. So I'm not going to try and tell them how to best use their technology. I'm going to give them a rich toolkit and watch them go off and be fantastic with it. Okay, so how did we implement that strategy? We were fortunate enough to get some funding to establish a foundation of our ICT strategy in 2018. It took us 4 years to implement. We thought, of course, it would take less time, but you know, a little thing called COVID got in the way, and we had, $44 million, and the objective from ISIP Stage 1 was to procure a platform that could meet our diverse needs, or prepare ourselves as an organisation to be able to implement it, and then prove that platform by rolling it out in a couple of complex use cases to address some particularly painful legacy problems that we had. We went through a very extensive procurement process. We ended up selecting Microsoft Dynamics and the Power Platform as our tool set for the future. We engaged our delivery partners, and then in the middle of COVID, we pivoted and built the home quarantine solution. Some of you may have even used that solution. So instead of going into hotel quarantine, you're able to quarantine at home. Again, right up our alley, but you know, we're pretty flexible. And then we proved our new technology solution by rolling out our new solution called QJuror. Some of you will have done jury service probably in the last 18 months, and you may have been invited to complete your jury questionnaire online, and you will have received SMS alerts around when you're required. After you've done jury service, you get paid through EFT. The sort of thing that you just expect to do. But before we could roll this solution out, we were writing people letters, writing out cheques at the end of it, requiring people to ring up and every night to find out whether they were required for jury service. So it was truly an archaic process, and we've really leapfrogged in terms of what we could do with what is today considered some pretty basic technology. The second proof was we built a civil case management system called QCase. That is electronic file management in our courts from cradle to grave. No longer will you see those caped warriors wheeling trolleys full of paper into courthouses when this thing is rolled out, because everything will be electronic, which is fantastic. Really looking forward to that. Maybe we can have less courthouses after we do that. We've currently rolled that out to QCAT. Our KPI for uptake in the first year was 50% of people lodging electronically, and we hit that within 4 weeks. So people are very keen on using the solution. And we'll be rolling out to magistrates' courts in the near future. There's a couple of procurement lessons that we learned from Stage 1. And now, as much as we all love procurement, you can have too much of a good thing. And so one of the lessons that we've taken out of ISIP Stage 1 is that we must leverage standing offers and whole of government arrangements whenever we can. We engage our contingent labour through the resource manager, and time and materials arrangements are much better than fixed price, particularly when you're trying to implement in an agile methodology. Hard-won lessons. Okay, ISIP Stage 2. I've only got a few minutes left, so I'll skip through this fairly quickly. Sorry about that. We are in the midst of, or we've just started, I should say, a $126 million program. We have our funding, sorry Tim, and we're on the way. We are going to do, we've got 4 major programs that we're implementing. The first one is to digitise courts and tribunals. That's a big undertaking. As we said at the very opening slide, there's multiple courts, different jurisdictions, 100 different locations. It's a big gig, that one. To have a digital criminal court, you must have a digital Director of Public Prosecutions. They're in every single criminal trial, just about. So they've got to be digital too, so we're digitising the DPP. The third activity we're doing is we're consolidating some old legacy systems in the Division of Liquor, Gaming and Fair Trading, those guys who regulate the cafes to casinos, and delivering a lot of our services online. A lot of people, a lot of small businesses have got a lot of paperwork to do and a lot of archaic process to follow. We're trying to digitise all of that and make that a much better experience for that stakeholder group. And the last one is what we're calling the Digital Enablement Program. It's building common technologies, updating some legacy across the organisation, but also those technologies that those 3 programs above will need. They're all going to need contemporary content services management, for example. They're all going to need some form of unified collaboration to engage with their stakeholder groups, data and analytics. They're going to be using identity to transact with their people online. So we're doing all of those common technologies in a program run separately to the other 3. And we'll be leveraging all of those things that we built in Stage 1. Okay, the good bit. Opportunities. We have some processes that are in flight at the moment, or those things that are established from ISIP stage 1. Our technology's set, we know what we're doing. We're clearly in the Microsoft stack. We're not a huge organisation, and we are very, very lean in the terms of our ICT support. So we've got to standardise ICT 101 on one technology platform so we can adequately support it. We partner with professional service organisations because, again, being so lean, we have a very thin team and we have to rely on our partners to assist us with the expertise and sometimes the capacity where we don't have it. There are two processes out in the market at the moment. One's for architecture and design advisory, and the other one is for what I call a Microsoft stack support, so more technical. Those processes are in flight at the moment, and we hope that they'll be concluded this calendar year. So, other things that are coming up. We will be leveraging more professional services. We will look to have leverage existing standing offers, or where they don't exist, we'll look to stand them up. Because we have a 4-year program, it might even run longer, and we certainly want to continue to access those services after the end of the program. And so we'll be looking to form strong partnerships with very capable suppliers who will be with us for the long time. For the long term, I should say. And the sorts of things we're going to be looking for during the life of the program are project and program assurance, testing services that will probably endure beyond the end of the program as well, ISMS assurance, penetration testing, and we're considering data and analytics as a service. We have some, Nathan, you want to sell me some services, Nathan? We have high demand from our internal customer group for business intelligence, and we're looking to, we don't have that capability internally, so we'll be probably partnering with a specialist provider to help us with that. A potential opportunity that might unfold, I can't be certain because those programs are not quite at that point where they're determined how they're going to implement, is that we might be approaching the market for an integrator to help take all of our existing technologies and architectural patterns and turn them into business outcomes. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ashley. The presentation quality was made up by the delivery, so well done. Very entertaining. What a complex organisation. I've worked in government for a while, and you learn something new every day about the complexity of organisations and the amazing things that they do every day. And Ashley, I can probably see you down in the CSI lab as that comes into the department. I'm sure you'll have fun down there. Can I just highlight one important point that came out of Ashley's there were many, but one point I'd like to make, and that's the way that the CIOs are now working together. So as an ex-CIO, I'm sort of heartened to see how closely that CIO group across government is now working together to benefit from each other, to join up services, to understand how each impacts the other as we go forward. So thanks for highlighting that, Ashley. Our final speaker today, and Ashley promised me he'd stick to time, but he didn't. So we might be a little fast here, Nathan. So Nathan Vines is our final speaker. Nathan works with me in the Queensland Government Customer and Digital Group. He looks after data and information services. They're doing some amazing, amazing things. So I won't spend long describing what they're doing because Nathan will impress you, I'm sure. He's a very experienced data analyst working in the space for many years, and he's leading the whole of government position from a data and analytics perspective. The incredible work that they're currently doing in AI blows me away every day, and I'm sure Nathan will touch on that for us this morning. So if you can welcome Nathan Vines.
Realised I didn't send through a bio, and then I realised Darren was MC, and I thought this could be anything. But thank you. So, Yeah, probably just a little bit of context. I sit in the customer and digital group and responsible for all things data and AI now, so from policy and strategy through to delivery. We also have a sort of internal to government consultancy model where we provide analytics services out to departments, hence Ashley's comment, as well as shared platforms. I thought we'd start with a bit of context setting. I think we've all been through the journey and heard both sides of the conversation around, well, what's AI mean for us as society? We had Geoffrey Hinton come out of Google and talk about, the fact that we need to pause. We've had, I think, strategically some vendors coming out and saying everyone else needs to pause, or we need to be regulated because only the big guys can handle that at the moment. There's also talk around the impact on people. Universal basic income. There's a reason why people out of Silicon Valley have been talking about this technology and its relation to universal basic income is because they can see the future impacts of this. Discussing around, the productivity revolution. What are the realistic impacts? Because there's a whole heap of things on each side of the scale. There's people saying it's doom and gloom and we need to stop. There's people saying it's going to revolutionise our economy and the way we work. Some interesting research has come out. To put it in context of what it means for Australia, McKinsey said that internationally 2.6 to 4.4 trillion. It's quite a large scale, but to the global economy, the Microsoft and Tech Council of Australia, which is one I found interesting, they talk about up to 5% of GDP for Australia. To put that into context for yourself, the mining boom was estimated at about 4 to 5%. So if that's true, we are talking about something that's going to have a large impact on the Australian economy. There's been labour market impacts already. I'm sure we've all heard about the Hollywood writers and actors strikes. The federal government has already made a position where policy will first and foremost protect workers. It's something we need to think about. I personally, and we'll probably get to that as we discuss, I think we're in a position now where we've got a shortage of labour, we've got an unmet demand for government service delivery, so it's a perfect time to be able to bring this technology in. It's not about replacing jobs, it's allowing us to service more people in a better way, in a more efficient and effective way. You can't have a presentation without a good meme. I may not have the flashy slides, but I thought this one was pretty funny. The point of that is it's actually impacting a large, broad section of society that maybe others hadn't thought about in the past. So what are we doing? I guess the key message for us is in customer and digital group and government more broadly, we're embracing the opportunity to leverage this technology for better public services. The conversation early on is very much, and some places still is, very much around the risk. What is the risk of implementing this technology? It's kind of moving to, well, how can we actually use, these tools and technologies to deliver better services and better outcomes? And that's our role, around the policy, the strategy, the guardrails, to lean into agencies and help them through support and leadership to embrace the technology. And from there, the real question I think that we're all getting to after we go through the POCs and we start to understand how this technology works is, well, what do we want from AI as government? And I'm sure every organisation is asking the same questions. How do we measure? Are we getting value? And obviously that really talks to an AI strategy, which is definitely on the roadmap for us over the next 12 months. We're providing appropriate guardrails. So obviously our role is to make sure that we're applying this technology in a safe and ethical way. I'm really keen to make sure, though, that the guardrails are broad. We're able to foster innovation. The fact is these tools are available to every person out there now. We're talking about generative AI, obviously, LLMs. We want to be able to engage business areas and have them interact with these tools. That's where the innovation comes from. To do that, we've been working on some approved tools for government that have some appropriate guardrails in place. We've worked on appropriate policy responses, so we'll talk to that in more detail in a minute. But we have the generative AI guidelines that have been published publicly for public servants on how to use some of these tools. That's a first step. And then to allow them to innovate, we're actually setting up an innovation and experimentation environment. As I mentioned, generative AI has really democratised access to tools. There's a lot of people out there with great ideas, and in the past, they might not have had the technical expertise to implement their ideas. The great thing about generative AI is people can then, that gap is bridged I threaten my staff that I might go back to cutting code one day soon. Haven't done it for years, but these tools are allowing people to take their ideas and turn them into something with the help of technology. We want to make sure we target our investment appropriately. We want to make sure that government is investing where we can provide value for public servants and for the economy. And we want to set up a core platform centrally to allow departments to share some of the core services that we're going to build, share some of the safety as a service and some of the guardrails that we're able to implement across government so that other agencies can leverage that. That's just a plug for the guidelines and the information sheet. It's available online. If you just Google generative AI in Queensland Government, you'll be able to access that in the 4Gov page. That's our first step, I guess, in the policy space. This is a bit of a rough guide, and apologies, it's not a flashy presentation either, but on what we're doing now, next and later. So the guidance and advice has been released. Similar to other states, most states are doing something similar around getting something out there early to advise agencies on, and public servants on how to use these tools. I think the key there is it's not a message around no, don't use them. That's never been our position. There's an appropriate use of public tools potentially for non-government information for your own benefit. There's tools that you're going to be able to use where you can upload sensitive government information, and that's really where there's some value. Next in the policy space is working on a national AI assurance framework. So many of you may know that New South Wales has an AI assurance framework that they published a couple of years ago. There's an acknowledgement that that needs to be revisited with the rise of generative AI being ubiquitous across tools, platforms, businesses. The approach there needs to be revisited. So we're working on a national AI working group with all the states in the Commonwealth to, I guess, produce version 2 of that framework. And the intent is that all states will have an aligned assurance process for AI. Following on from that, obviously Queensland doesn't have a published AI strategy. I think it's almost an opportunity that we have that other states don't, is that they're all going and revisiting their AI strategy right now because of the rapid advancements. So we're in a greenfield state, but obviously it's something that's important for Queensland. On the technology stream, we've actually stood up an internal government GPT, I think we call it Q chat at the moment. Not the most imaginative, but it describes what it does. So it's a private, obviously based on the OpenAI Microsoft service for now, but we're building a front end that should be technology agnostic. And the idea is that public servants can access these tools, starting with just the chat interface. It's secure, it's logged, we have single sign-on for government, we can understand usage, we can report on it. No data is travelling outside of our environment, so they can upload briefing notes and those sort of things. So we've got that in a private preview with a few departments now. The intent over time is to roll that out, but the key underneath that is an integration platform to allow us to provide some of those core common services to agencies. So we're doing some experimentation right now on a range of proof of concepts / pilots with agencies to understand where best to invest our time, how this technology might be applied. I think we've all got some ideas, and a lot of the ideas coming out of businesses are very similar. There's knowledge management, there's generating content and summarising, there's scripting. We need to test and learn, essentially. We know there's products coming on all of the vendors' roadmaps. We need to make sure that we understand where we can play a role. And to that point, probably moving on to the second slide already. So yeah, we've got that QChat service up. We're building the AI platform in the background. We are partnering with industry and vendors on some of that. We do want to build a core group of people that can manage these services internal to government. We've got some work around safety as a service that we're planning to embed government context and safety and system prompts behind some of the tools that everyone can use. So an agency can come and plug into our platform and consume some of that safety and performance and the rest of it all tuned into the back end. And I guess, why you guys here is to understand how you can work with government. What are we doing? We're setting up an AI oversight committee. There's an AI assurance process, and that committee, I should say, is likely to involve government, academia and industry. It's a strategic body. That AI assurance framework obviously will be embedded in an assurance process, which we're working on. We had our inaugural AI community of practice in government about a month ago. I think we had 400 odd people attend, so that was great to see. We've got our next one on Monday. We're obviously participants and contributors to the National AI Working Group, which is essentially chief data officers from each state and territory. We're engaging with academia actively. We're looking to have some discussions around how we can partner on research programs. We know that's not, I guess, our strength in government, or at least in our unit. We do want to have conversations with vendors on your strategic roadmaps. And we want to innovate and experiment with new services, obviously. One of the great things about generative AI in particular is the opportunity for communities and marginalised communities, digital equity for people, as long as they've got the connectivity and the ability to use these tools, and that's where the rest of customer and digital group comes into play in terms of some of the strategies, it's going to provide, I think, real opportunities for people who haven't had them before. So what do we want to know? How are you planning to integrate AI into your products and services? Because with everything we're doing, there's obviously a risk of obsolescence. That's not the only, I guess, decision point for why we would undertake a pilot or a POC. We need to learn, we need to experiment. But we do want to know, where should government invest their time in services, and what are our vendors doing? Where are they going to fill gaps? How might your investment and your product roadmaps or your services shape our investment in the future? More broadly, and that's what we're thinking about, and I hope it's what the vendors are thinking about, is how can we reshape government service delivery? That's the real power of some of these tools, is to rethink the way that we use systems. Are the systems we've got in place now going to be required in future? Are the processes that we have required? And something that I think is going to become more and more important is, how do we capture and measure ROI on these investments? There's a lot at the moment of thought around this. Is great. We know people want to use these tools. We know they can get value out of it, but really we need to understand what the value is to government if we're going to invest money. So I think that's a bit of a repeat. Probably the last dot point there is important as well, because in the policy space, we're starting to understand, well, what are the policy levers available for government to regulate and assure AI? We responded to the federal discussion paper on the responsible use of AI, and I think there's some common themes around industry-led regulation in specific domains, and broad regulation of the application, not the AI models themselves, so regulation of the use of AI. There's obviously very smart people in the room and an industry that can help government understand what those levers are. And that is me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. As I said, very informative, very exciting, that particular field of work, and moving at a pace that we probably don't normally see, either generally across community and in industry, but also within government. So Nathan's done some fantastic work to work through a number of what we'd normally see as barriers to make things happen. So congratulations, Nathan. Can I ask Tim, Ashley and Nathan to come back onto the floor and grab a seat? And we'll have a bit of time for Q&A. First question is, sound level is very poor. Good, we fixed that, I hope. Okay, I do have a question. What's the government's timeline and focus relative to workforce integration and in particular mobility and optimisation? Timeline and focus relative to workforce integration and in particular mobility and optimisation. I'm looking to the panel of very intelligent people here. So Tim, what are you doing from a mobility perspective? Or Ashley, sorry, was going to speak.
Look, I think our workforce is sorting out the mobility issue for us. We're seeing an enormous amount of churn that happens. I'm presuming that the question was around people moving within government as opposed to mobile devices. And we're seeing, Generation Z, Alpha, whoever they are nowadays, moving, treating government jobs a bit like the gig economy and moving very rapidly between agencies, which is great. It pollinates, fresh ideas, which is terrific. I don't think that we actually have to do anything to try and drive a workforce mobility because it's happening.
Anyone else? Tim, agree? Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
So we are seeing a fair bit of... I'm glad we're not paying him for this.
You couldn't afford it anyway.
Good, good. Yeah, we are seeing a lot of mobility across government at the moment, you know, for people with the appropriate skills. But, it, you know, like in, I'm sure, every organisation, it is hard to get great people, and we're competing. We're trying, particularly in the digital space, to not compete against each other and, you know, eat each other alive. That works in many instances, but not all. And as I said, we've got the CIOs working closely together, looking at those sort of issues and opportunities. Can I throw it to the audience? Who would have a question for me? I can pick some names out. I can see some people I know. Here's one. Thank you.
Hi, Paul Prokich from G1 Asset Management. I'd just like to, it's possibly a question to ask a bit early, but just wondering if you have any initial indications of what the budget for ICT capital expenditure might be for next year and in the possible years ensuing as part of a 3 or 5 year plan, I guess leading up eventually to the 2032 Olympics, because it's been fairly tight in that area, and I'm sure a number of suppliers in this room would testify to that in terms of opportunities of being able to engage with the Queensland Government, and just wondering if the purse strings are likely to be released to some degree, or whether you have any indications.
Yeah, well,
there.
I guess the reality is that's where we're at now in terms of, from our perspective at least, developing that detailed business case to put to government the case for change and what's needed. As hopefully I outlined, you know, we know that we're embarking upon a pretty significant business change, and for us to execute it correctly, the change management aspect is more important than the technology piece. No disrespect, but I think probably most of us that have been around long enough know that the technology piece will be fine. It will do what technology does. It's the change management piece that's capturing hearts and minds of the workforce across the state that will result in a successful outcome. So we've designed and scaled our proposed program accordingly. Yeah, so there'll be, we think we've attempted to provide for an appropriate number in terms of what that investment will be required over what we think will be through the very earliest we're hoping to be able to go live would be this sort of time frame, 2026, if we were lucky, in terms of the change impact. And then we know that we're planning for a whole series of improvements and to circle back around and look for opportunities, because there's so much today that we don't know what we don't know in terms of the opportunity presented to us. And, you know, as Nathan sort of outlined, what impact is AI going to have on property assessments? You know, do we get to the point of sending the drone up to fly around the Cairns Convention Centre to tell us what the outcome already is? You know, we're already using drones to do that, but it's still a human that's looking at the video footage. So, yeah, from our perspective, we're certainly pitching to government what we think is an appropriate figure. How about that?
I think it's probably pretty fair to say that, you know, the lead up to the Olympics, there's the state government's going to be under a lot of pressure in terms of budget. Olympics don't come cheap, and there's stadiums and all sorts of other things that need to be built that are going to compete for the available capital. So probably the thing that's going to be really, really critical for ICT is delivering great value.
Yeah, and thanks, Paul. So obviously we went through savings and debt, where government spent less in this particular space through that COVID period. We're coming out of that. It is a tight fiscal environment, but I think there is a little bit of, I won't say unshackled, but loosening of government spend in the digital space. We're currently looking at our, what we call at-risk systems, so our legacy debt, and just looking at how government should respond to that as well. I can tell you on the digital dashboard, and coincidentally I looked at it last night, there's about $900 million worth of investment in Queensland Government on that dashboard at the moment, but a fair portion of that is in Queensland Health. So you'd probably find about 50% in Queensland Health at the moment. But yeah, have a look at the dashboard. It gives you a good feel of where money's being spent on initiatives. So there are other things other than specific initiatives, but on initiatives in government at the moment. Other questions? There's, oh. Just right, yeah.
G'day guys, it's Ian Richards here from Integration Works. Ashley, you mentioned there was a potential opportunity for systems integration. Are you actually looking at internal systems integration within DJAG, or is that hooking into the wider whole of government interoperability strategy, assuming there is one, of course?
We will be integrating with whole of government services. We're a good corporate citizen. We have a lot of services already integrated with the Tell Us Once My Queensland solution, and we, if we can leverage SAP or any other investment government's already made, we will do that. But the integration that we're likely to pursue, if it comes to pass, and it may not, is that we'll be looking to take all of those modules that exist in our Dynamics and Microsoft Stack platform and compose some sort of business solution that meets the particular needs of, you know, that myriad of different business units. So whilst they all might be on, you know, a common technology or a common platform, you've got to, you know, plumb them all together. So that's the sort of integration we're looking for. Hopefully that answers your question.
Great. I think there's another question over here.
Hi, David from BitQ. Sorry, a little bit further away. So there's not a single client at the moment, whether it's federal, states, you know, commercial clients that we're talking to that aren't focused on AI, and it's really, really exciting from that point of view. The challenge, as you know, obviously, is that unless your data is in order, unless your governance structures and that are in order, it's going to go down a very ugly path very quickly. Is there a drive from government, from agencies, to try and accelerate getting your data in order so that we can start focusing on AI and how that can actually benefit the community?
Yeah, there is. It's in many conversations we're having right now. Part of my remit is also the data strategy for Queensland. We've just done a big piece of work around a data sharing framework for Queensland Government, understanding the legislative and policy environment. A portion of that is around data governance, obviously. But yeah, I see data quality, data governance being a really important theme for agencies moving forward before the adoption of these AI tools more broadly. Even if you think about, you know, something like Copilot, I think, as you do with most data analytics projects, the first thing you find out is how bad your data is when you start to drill into it. And I think that's going to be highlighted even more so when it comes to the use of LLMs and we start to try and hit our unstructured data. It's a bit of an unknown for departments at the moment, but we are talking around what does readiness look like for AI across our unstructured data, particularly in government. So yeah, there's not a strategy or an approach in place yet, but it's definitely something we're talking about, and if someone's got some ideas to bring to the table, more than happy to.
Thanks, Nathan. Any other questions? Can I remind, if you're online, just type it in. I think there's one up the back there to my right. It's a race. Go, Amelia, go. If you're online, please just type it in. I can see it right here.
Hi, Bronwyn Edwards from DXC Technology. There's a lot of process work happening, and I just wondered where you stand on automation, RPA, and whether you've got any preferred partners already. Do you have software that you preference above any others?
Does anyone want to take that one? Ashley, Jim? Doing anything in RPA?
There are robotic process automations happening in government, not in our own agencies, and it is used where it's most applicable. Certainly from DJAG, most of our transactions are very bespoke, so it's a little hard to automate some of them. Any other?
I can, I guess, talk from what I know about what's happening in Customer and Digital Group and in QSS.
In QSS,
Yeah, so there's, I guess, a bit of a history of RPA work in QSS. That's where it fits naturally, right, in terms of the big ERPs and automating some of those processes. I think the conversation, it's interesting, you know, everyone's jumping to GPT and large language models. Some of that work is essentially, some of those applications that people are talking about is what we are doing with RPA. And an extension of that. So I think and I've seen UiPath and some of those vendors talking about how they're integrating those tools and products. I think it's going to be part of the AI conversation more broadly. I think it's probably lifted the attention on RPA. But yeah, I can't speak for preferred vendors. I know there are people doing things, and I know it's something we're thinking about as well.
So QSS is Queensland Shared Services, so the shared service provider in Queensland Government. And yeah, they're sort of doing probably the lead piece of work at the moment in that space. I can't quote the product, sorry, but we can get that detail for you. But seen as a bit of a pilot site that might then be used in other government agencies in that core and common type concept that we're working towards. There's a question here down the front. Quick toilet stop over here. It's very easy to walk out subtly out of this room, isn't it?
I won't hold up everyone too long. Evan Escott from Working Mouse. Question here. So Ashley and Tim are off on their modernisation projects, and us professional service organisations are doing a great job for these guys. Is Nathan going to open up QChat to professional services so we can use the LLMs to deliver your modernisation projects?
Good question. Our intent broadly was for it to be a public sector focused tool. And I'm conscious that QChat is just one product based on a LLM stack. I think where partners are working with the government department and an agency on, there's no reason they can, as they normally do, take advantage of the tools that agency has to deliver. So yeah, and if that's an AI platform or a chat service, yeah.
So is that a yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounded like a qualified yes. Any other questions? Yep, one more here. We might make this the last one so we can get out for some coffee and chat. Down, next row down. Yep, that's it. Right in the middle.
Pass the plate down.
Thank you. Bob Bishop, I'm the chairman of Hexacor. We're a Queensland-based company operating in 3 states. I'd really like to see government take on a greater role in training jobs for the future, building nurseries where you can actually graduate employees that will be relevant to government into the future. We've got 110 staff, and I've lost 5% of those staff in the last 12 months to Queensland Government. It's not because we don't pay well, it's just that the financial incentives that government are offering are way beyond the capabilities of small private companies.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'll take that one if you don't mind. So we've got an initiative called our Digital Professional Workforce Action Plan, which is to train, educate, encourage people into the digital economy space, and happy to take something offline and have a chat with you about what we're doing in that space and where the opportunities are. So our goal is to attract 10,000 or educate 10,000 people to be ready for a digital job, but from an awareness perspective to get over 300,000 people aware of the opportunities associated with that. And so that starts early. That's working with schools in encouraging more people into STEM, particularly young ladies, and to take a career in the digital space, and sort of describing how expansive it is today. You know, it's not that I'm sitting in the back room cutting code. There's so much that you could be doing from a digital perspective. So happy to catch up directly to discuss that further. All right, I might wrap up. Can you thank Tim, Ashley and Nathan? Of course, me being the nag I am, I'm going to come back and mention those two initiatives I mentioned at the start. So the first one is the First Nations Digital Service Centres, us working with communities to put jobs in communities. If you are interested in that, please contact me, darren.bond at whatever it is. And the other one is the First Nations Digital Careers Program that I mentioned, our partnership with Microsoft. If you'd like to be a host partner, we are asking for expression of interests now, and there's actually a QR code out at the front desk that you're able to scan if you're interested in being part of that. You'll get a survey about today's presentations. Don't be too cruel on Ashley on his presentation quality. I think the delivery was great, so let's not be too nasty to him. Any inquiries of these briefings, please go to the Business Queensland website or contact the Partners in Technology team. Today's presentation was recorded, and so that will appear on the website very, very shortly. Thanks to the team who coordinates all these. These just don't pop up and magically happen, so thanks to the PiT team who's been working with us and working with you to make these things happen. We will have more events going forward. And please join us for a little bit of morning tea out on the terrace, just out here to the right, I think it is. And we can have a bit of a chat if you'd like to catch up about anything. But thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you for giving up your time to come and hear us speak. So thank you.